Hello, everybody. Welcome in from across the continent and beyond. My name is Jesse, and I am your virtual adventure guide here with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. If you're new to what we do as an organization, we're all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And this is just our second week diving into this new epic school year. We've gone across the Pacific Ocean with world-class adventurer Aaron Irich. We've hung out with National Geographic wildlife filmmakers. We've learned about sharks and dinosaurs and birds and lemurs, and it's exhausting and so much fun. So thank you all so much for joining us as we continue to showcase and celebrate such cool people and places around the globe. Now today is special, even by our standards, because today, in case you didn't know, is World Rhino Day. So we always do a huge to-do around World Rhino Day, celebrating some really, really cool people working to save the rhino species around this planet. We started off early in the day all the way in Indonesia with the International Rhino Foundation and Rudy Putra talking about saving Sumatran rhinos, which are adorable and have like some fur on them, which is very cute. We got to hang out later with Old Peshita Conservancy in Kenya, talking to the last two northern white rhinos on this planet and the people that care for them. What a special, special opportunity, and I hope you take the chance to check it out on our YouTube channel. But right now, we're diving in with the program that has got us the most registrations of any program to start a year, and that is, as always, with the amazing team at the Toronto Zoo. And so I'm thrilled to dive in with Mary Ellen and Morgan at the zoo to hear a little bit more about their incredible rhinos, how they care for them, and more. And then we're going to head to the University of Toronto to hear from Jason Brown about some of the conservation work globally happening that he can share with us from the university angle. So if you guys are excited, let's buckle up together. We'll put on my professional hat, and I'm going to turn it over to the zoo team to blow your minds. Thank you so much for joining us, Morgan and Mary Ellen. Take us away.
Hello, everybody. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having us. It's wonderful to be back here with you, Jesse, doing our monthly videos. And we've got some amazing guests here with us this time. Before we jump in, I do just quickly want to do a land acknowledgement here at the Toronto Zoo. So we acknowledge that the land this is the land of the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on World Rhino Day. We're so excited to be able to share all about these amazing creatures and why they're so important. So I know we're truly here for our rhinos, so we're going to get nice up in and close here. And I'd like to introduce you to one of our rhinos here at the Toronto Zoo. Now, this is Kieran, and he is a 4-year-old greater one-horned rhino. And you might be able to tell right away how he gets his name, because if we look at his face, you're going to see there's only one horn on it right there at the front. There are 5 different types of rhinos in the world, and these are our greater one-horns. Now, here at the Toronto Zoo, we also do have white rhinos who live in our African savanna, and they are the rhinos that have the 2 really big horns sticking up the top of their head as well. Now, Kieran here is from our Indo-Malaya section of the world, and living here with him, he also has his dad, Vishnu. And we might see if we can go check out Vishnu, but he was having a very nice dust bath. And so we had to come over and check out Kieran here instead. But that's okay. We still think he's pretty cool. And he's going to teach us a lot about rhinos. Now, the most dramatic part about a rhino that we always see is their horn. Now, Jesse, we're going to test our audience a little bit here. See if everyone's been, listening, paying attention. We're back into school now. Got to make sure we're all learning lots. Does anyone in our audience know what a rhino horn is made out of?
Ooh, well, our first class that came in today was Mrs. Smith's class in Austin, Texas. So I'm going to head to them. If you guys want to unmute your mic, do you have any idea out there in Austin what our rhino horn is made out of? Fingernails, Mary Ellen. Is that right? That sounds crazy.
That is exactly correct. Congratulations. You guys are right. So it is actually a protein called keratin. And that keratin is in, well, I have nail polish on right now, but it's in our fingernails and our hair. So you basically have rhino horn in your body. And I like to call it, they have a fingernail growing out of their nose. The only difference is that theirs is really tightly compacted, and so it creates that nice big rhino horn. Now, it doesn't grow into this peak that we see here, but you can see even right now this wire that's here, Kieran's kind of brushing up against it, and he's got a big metal post beside him. And if we look into his exhibit, we see lots of trees and rocks and other items. Kieran's gonna rub his face up and down those to itch it, and when he does that, he's actually able to sharpen his horn. And they use this for defense and protection. So when they are growing up nice and big and strong, they want to make sure that they stay safe. And I don't know about you guys, but let me back up here so you can really see the size of them. I wouldn't want to go up against Kieran here. Indian rhinos, or greater one-horned rhinos, can weigh about 4,000 pounds or more, which, to give you an idea of how much that is, if you have ever seen a piano before, he weighs the same as about 5 grand pianos. That is a very impressive size for an animal, and he uses that size to help him survive. So I don't know if you saw at the beginning here, but we are feeding him lots of yummy snacks and goodies. And now he's actually eating what's called browse. So based on what we were feeding him, I think he had some cantaloupe and some carrots, and he had sweet potato as well. Anyone in our audience want to guess what type of animal he is? If he's a herbivore, omnivore, carnivore? What do we think rhinos are?
Ooh, our Stony Plain Central crew in Alberta. What do we think? Does he only eat plants? Does he eat a mix of both? Does he eat meat all the time? I think that's sort of iffy. Herbivore? Herbivore, very fervent. Okay, what do we think?
I like it. That is correct. He is a herbivore. And we can call these guys a grazer or a browser as well. And you'll see he's doing great action right now with his upper lip for us. So greater one-horned rhinos have what's called a prehensile upper lip. And what that means is you can see he's actually using his upper lip right now like a little bit like a hand, and he's using it to grab his food and pull it into his mouth. That would be like taking your hand to pick up something and bring it over to you as well. So he's got that prehensile upper lip that helps him to get all of his food, which means not only can he eat the food on the ground, he can eat food off of trees as well and pull any branches or yummy leaves that he sees fit. Now, rhinos are a really cool species, but they're having a little bit of trouble as well in the wild. So before we go and talk about how here at the zoo we're working to conserve them, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about what's going on with them and how they're being affected. So rhinos, well, you've already established, are quite large. They're pretty good, big size here, which means they like to have a lot of space as well. And in their habitats right now, unfortunately, they're having spatial issues. So although Kieran here is pretty friendly with us, he is still a wild animal, and we don't want to go near him as he could hurt us even by accident just due to his big size. In the wild, rhinos will love to go onto farmers' fields and eat all of their veggies as well and anything they're growing. And so people are not too happy about that and can sometimes lash out at them. Also, we talked about their horn and how it's made of fingernail, but unfortunately, there's still some rumors out there in the world that their horn is magical or really special, and that it can help cure ailments and sickness in humans, which is not true. And these guys, unfortunately, are being hunted for that. So we're going to learn about some ways that we help out with rhino conservation and breeding programs here at the zoo in just a second. But I want to thank everyone, Kieran's turning his bum to us here, for joining us here today to learn about Kieran. Because just by talking about him and learning all about what their horns truly are and why they're such an incredible species, we are working to help save them. And by supporting organizations like the Toronto Zoo and other rhino conservation, especially on Rhino Day, we're able to help save them and work together to conserve this amazing species. Now, I want to introduce you to my friend Morgan here, and Morgan's going to talk to you a little bit more about how the zoo helps conserve these species.
Hello everyone, I'm so excited to be here and talking to you all about rhino reproduction. So my name's Morgan, just like Mary Ellen said, and I work for our science department, and I do a lot of the communicating of the amazing science that happens here every single day at the Toronto Zoo. So I'm specifically talking about our reproduction department today. So zoos that are a part of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums are also part of a species survival plan. So this is basically like a dating app or a dating site for our animals. So this program helps us decide which animal is best paired with another, what animals we want to breed together, and where we should move these animals in order to spread out their genetics properly. So, a long time ago, here at the Toronto Zoo, we had Kieran's parents, Asha and Vishnu. So Asha and Vishnu were an amazing pair. They got along really, really well. They were genetically very compatible, and they were going to make some really amazing babies. However, when Kieran's brother Nandu was trying to be born, they needed a little bit of help. So Asha and Vishnu were having lots of breeding attempts. However, she wasn't able to carry the babies to term, so she sadly kept losing her babies. So the reproductive department here at the Toronto Zoo decided that we wanted to explore this a little bit farther. So with the help of the keepers, we were able to collect poo samples from our rhinos. So you can imagine that's some pretty big samples. So we collected these samples and actually looked at the hormones in the samples. So all animals use this one hormone called progesterone to carry pregnancies. So by studying Asha's poop samples, we found that her progesterone levels were not actually as high as they need to be in order to allow for a successful pregnancy. So the Toronto Zoo worked really hard at figuring out what to do to help her raise her levels. So what ended up happening is we actually gave Asha progesterone supplements, and this cost the zoo over $10,000. Because as you can imagine, really big species, they need a lot of supplements to help them. So with the help of these progesterone supplements, she was actually able to carry her pregnancy to term. So I'm going to show you this little chart here. In red, we had a hormone telling us that she was ready to be bred. And then in blue, you can see her progesterone levels rising to a level that is appropriate to carry her baby to term. Then on February 17th, we were very, very excited to welcome little calf Nandu, and they were very healthy and happy. So this was really exciting for both mom and dad. She had her baby, and then a little fun fact, a few years later, her and Vishnu, so Asha and Vishnu, were ready to try for another baby. And the really exciting part here is that her body this time knew what to do. Her body was able to produce those hormones all on her own, and the reproduction team did not have to intervene at all. And that's how we got Mr. Kieran. So this just goes to show that the reproductive science team here is really a big part of the conservation that the Toronto Zoo does. And ideally, in a natural world, we don't want to have any help for these pregnancies. But that's why the reproduction team is here, is to help conserve these species. So that's it for the reproduction story for these guys. I'll throw it back to you, Jesse, and we can hear from our partners at UTSC.
Morgan, that was spectacular. Thank you so much for sharing that and for braving what sounds like a hurricane to tell us that story. We've had a lot of reproductive stuff at the zoo before, and I really encourage our audience to go to our YouTube channel, check out the stuff we've done with bison there, giraffes, and many more talking about some of that reproductive work. But thank you for getting us the chance to hang out with Kieran and Mary Ellen and Morgan. Really appreciate the chat today. Now, as Morgan said, we are going to head to Jason Brown, joining us at the University of Toronto Scarborough campus, to tell us a little bit more about conservation before we dive in with our Q&A. So, Jason, tough act to follow. We have a pretty awesome rhino here with us today, but welcome to the broadcast, and thanks so much for being a part today.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And you're right, it is definitely a tough act to follow. So I will do my best here. So yeah, my name is Jason Brown. I'm from the University of Toronto Scarborough. I'm a teaching professor here on campus. So I teach all kinds of courses all year long and thousands of students every year. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about hibernation. Mostly is going to kind of be my focus, because that's the research that I used to participate in, and you know, thinking about this conservation theme, a key part of the conservation of any species is that species being able to survive in the wild under whatever conditions it's going to face. And so I kind of want to start here by thinking about, when you could face some harsh conditions. So I've got this little picture here of just a kind of nice winter scene. And, we kind of take for granted as humans that food is always going to be easy to get. You go to your grocery store, or you go to a restaurant and there's food there. But, think about a wild animal, trying to live in this winter environment. I'm looking at this picture and there are a few leaves on trees maybe there, but there's not a lot of food out there to eat in the wintertime. You've got some evergreen needles maybe, but all the other nice leaves have fallen off and all the insects are hiding someplace and they're not out there. So it can be really challenging for animals to survive in the winter because of just how little food there is. And so one of the strategies that some animals use to try and survive in the winter is they will hibernate. Now, I don't know, I was going to try to do the Mary Ellen throwback here and say, if I was to ask the classes, like, what is an example of a hibernating animal? I just kind of wonder what the answer to that would be.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, Miss Benoit's class, I know you guys are a little younger, but do you know any animal that hibernates over the winter, maybe? That doesn't stay up, it sort of goes into a long, long rest. What do we think?
I'm a bear.
A bear? Right on. Jason's got a picture and everything.
There we go. That's perfect. You guys gave me the exact answer I was hoping you were going to give, is bears. Because generally when you ask people, name a hibernator, that's the first image that comes to mind is like black bears and other bears that hibernate. And what's kind of interesting about that is that's the first answer people come up with. But, scientists actually spent a long time debating whether or not bears actually hibernated or not. Like, we definitely know that they go into their dens in the winter and they just sort of hang out in there and they don't come out until spring. But there was a lot of debate in science about, do they actually hibernate or are they just kind of lazing about for the winter? And now we know for sure that they do hibernate, but one of the biggest things that makes bears kind of unique among hibernators is just how big they are, right? You saw those rhinos earlier and they're pretty big too. I mean, black bears are kind of in that similar size range. And there are no other big animals that hibernate except for bears. Rhinos don't hibernate, elephants don't hibernate, horses don't hibernate, deer. I mean, all those big animals that you think of, the bear is the only one that hibernates. So anyways, scientists now know that bears do hibernate, but I want to introduce you to some other animals that we know also hibernate and talk a little bit about them. I got this guy here. You probably recognize this guy here maybe. It's a chipmunk. And you can see this chipmunk is eating right now, and you can see how his cheeks are really kind of sticking right out, because when chipmunks are out there in the spring and the summer, they're out there not just eating the food that they need right now to survive, but they're also storing a bunch of food for the winter in anticipation that it's going to be really hard to find food in the winter. So this guy will store a bunch of food in his cheeks, and he'll run back to his habitat and he'll drop that food off. And then he'll go out and find some more. And he's just trying to store enough food so that he can just hang out all winter long and never have to leave his house and go out and find food. He can just live off the food that he's got stored up. So we call these guys food storing hibernators. But there's a challenge with being a food storing hibernator. One of those challenges is, what happens if you forget where you've put some of your food? Oftentimes these guys will hide their food in different locations. They could forget where it is. And sometimes their food gets stolen, and so then they don't have the food they need. And sometimes it spoils. Chipmunks don't exactly have refrigerators in their habitat, so sometimes the food goes bad. And so what chipmunks will do if they don't have enough food to make it through the entire winter is that's when they'll go into hibernation. And they'll basically shut their bodies down for, weeks or months on end. And they'll just try to be in this really low energy utilizing state and just try to subsist off of whatever energy they have in their body. They do that if they run out of food. I got another animal here I want to show you. So this is an animal that actually does not hibernate. So this you might recognize depending on where you are in the world. This is a tree squirrel. So tree squirrels don't hibernate. If you are somewhere in the world where they have tree squirrels, you see these guys out and about all winter long, right? And sometimes you might be, my dad often says, I'm feeding the birds, and these squirrels keep coming in there eating all the bird food. That's because they're hungry. we already said there's not a lot of food out there in the winter for animals. So tree squirrels, they just try to find enough food. They will go out and try to find food all winter long. They don't hibernate. But I'll give you an example of a squirrel that does. I don't know if anybody recognizes this guy here.
Cool.
Do you see this guy here?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Okay. This guy, anybody know what this guy is?
I don't even know what that guy is, and I'm a mammal biologist by background. Let's see. Miss T's Champs, our BC crew. Any idea what this guy is?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
What did you say, Emma? A 13-line ground squirrel.
Well, holy cow, that is perfect. That's exactly what that is. And I think you said they were from BC, if I heard that correctly. So that's why they will know the answer to that question, because you find these guys in the western part of North America. So they're pretty abundant in like Manitoba, Saskatchewan, BC, Montana, those kinds of places. We don't actually have these guys anywhere here in Toronto where I am. So we would have to, this is the species that I used to do some work on as a grad student. We used to go make trips to Western Canada to find them. But yeah, this is a 13-line ground squirrel, named, of course, for the lines you can see on it. Now, they're called ground squirrels because they don't live in trees like the tree squirrels do. Tree squirrels nest in trees. These guys, they live under the ground in burrows. And what they do is they will just eat and eat and eat all spring and summer long to fatten themselves up as much as they possibly can. And I won't be outdone by graphs, so I'll show you my own graph here. This graph basically just shows how much weight these squirrels gain over just a short period of time. So I'll just show you here. So this big rise right here, this big, huge change that you see, you can see the body weight goes from like 150 grams up to almost 300 grams. And it happens in just, over here, it happens in only like a month. So these squirrels, as they're getting ready for winter and they're going to hibernate in the winter, they just eat and eat and eat all spring and summer long, and they double their body weight in just a month. So imagine that. Think about how much you weigh right now, and imagine if by Halloween you weighed twice as much, right? Yeah, these guys get so big. In fact, I'll show you this here. This is not a ground squirrel, but this little red tube. We used to keep these squirrels in cages when we were doing research, and you would give them these little red tubes to hide in. Sometimes they'd get so fat they couldn't even fit in the tubes anymore. That's how big and fat they would get. Anyways, let me show you this picture next. This is a ground squirrel now hibernating, and so it's curled up in a ball here, and it's going to stay like this for pretty much the entire winter. And it just shuts its whole body down, and it's just trying to save as much energy as it can and just live off of all that fat that it stored up when it was eating and eating and eating away all spring and summer long. Okay, and so what's really cool too about these guys is you can see they're just kind of laying there and they look like they're sleeping. You would think they were sleeping, but it turns out they're not. They're actually awake, but they're just kind of like awake in this like unconscious state. And every once in a while, they'll actually wake up during the winter just to go to sleep. They'll arouse themselves out of hibernation so they can catch up on their sleep, which is kind of a fascinating thing. Okay, one last thing I'll show you here, because this relates, again, more to the conservation theme especially. Got another hibernating animal here, quite a bit of a different one. I don't know if people recognize what we're looking at here.
I think we're 5 for 5 for things so far, but Mr. Hancock,
we're doing really well.
What are we seeing here?
What do we see, everybody?
Bats!
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so these are bats, and I think they're specifically big brown bats. And they also are hibernators. They will hibernate during the winter. And actually, this is a picture of bats while they're hibernating. So they actually hibernate in big groups like this, called social hibernation. So, the other animals I showed you, like bears and ground squirrels, they hibernate individually by themselves, but these bats will hibernate all together in one big group like this, okay? And so that's pretty cool. And so then this kind of does really bring the conservation aspect in, because one of the things that's going on with bats right now is that bats are actually kind of dying around the world because of something called white nose syndrome. So this is a picture of a bat, and you can see this huge white area on its nose here. This is actually a fungus. It's a fungal infection that's covering the nose of this bat. You can't see it in the picture here. A little bit over here, you can see it's on the wing as well. And so what happens is when bats hibernate, they are shutting their whole body down. Animals, when they hibernate, they shut their whole body down. Their bodies get really, really cold. Well, one part of their body they're shutting down is their body's immune system, which is the part of your body that tries to prevent you from getting sick from things. Well, these bats are hibernating and they shut everything down, including their immune system. And then the fungi take advantage of that. And they say, you know what? Here's a whole colony of cold, immune, cold, vulnerable bats. Let's get in there and let's infect them. And they are. And so what's happening is bats around the world, this was first discovered in New York State about a decade ago, 10 years ago, and now it's spread all the way across all of North America pretty much. Mostly still in kind of the eastern parts, but it does get out to the West Coast from time to time. And we're seeing millions of bats die as a result of this infection. And it's this fungus taking advantage of the immune system being shut down. And of course, you might say to yourself, bats, like I don't really like bats anyways. I have a little personal story of bats. I have bats living in my house. We have a colony of bats that live in the walls of our house, so we love when winter comes along because then they're hibernating and they don't sneak into the house quite as often. But you could be thinking to yourself, bats, I don't care about bats. Who cares if they all die? But do you care about mosquitoes? Do you hate getting bitten by a mosquito and it comes and you're swatting it and you're like, no, let's just go inside. Well, bats eat mosquitoes. And so if you have bat populations starting to die because they're getting infected by these fungus, and the bat population starts to die, then the mosquito population starts to expand, right? And so even though you have species like a bat that you might not much care for yourself, and you might think, I don't care what happens to that bat, its disappearance from the world could have these cascading effects. And so yeah, I think it's my hibernation conservation story. So Jesse, I think I can turn it back to you.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for sharing all that. And again, a lot to think about for our students who, again, nailed all those questions. So thank you for getting our classes participating today. I'm kind of sorry for Miss Fisher's class. We have no reason to bring them in for anything, but we'll make sure to come to them first in our Q&A in just a minute. And really appreciate this joint Toronto Zoo UTSC broadcast. So, folks, on the question note, we are going to dive in a minute with queries for anyone. If you have questions about general stuff for Jason, if you want to go back to our Rhino team at the zoo and learn a little bit more about Kieran and some of the stuff going on there, feel free to dive in. I'm going to start unusually with a YouTube question today because it's the most niche question I've ever seen about rhinos ever, and I love it. So Miss Wright's class is in Massachusetts, and they want to know, is the rhino saliva sticky? Because it looks very sticky.
Oh, that's a beautiful question. I love that. This is actually Vishnu now. We've changed rhinos. So this is Kieran's dad, and he is an excellent producer of saliva here for us. We actually have one of our keepers just to the left of us. So I'm going to ask her real quickly. Would you say their saliva sticky?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sticky. A little bit. So they definitely do get their hands kind of right in there, and you can see he's got a good amount of slobber coming off of his mouth there. He's not very polite, though, when he eats. He always chews with his mouth open.
Yeah, and good amount of slobber is a line we've actually wanted in Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast for 7 years now. So thank you for giving that to us. Very much. On Miss Fisher's class, Carsonville, Michigan, if you guys want to lead us off with a question, turn on your camera and I'll come to you guys first. If not, I'll leave you for a sec. I'll head to our Austin crew, Miss Smith's third graders. If you guys want to kick us off with a question, you are good to go. Just unmute those mics, guys. Hello, Austin. Hi.
Brooks, go ahead. How many rhinos are there including all the species?
Yeah, how many species and how many individual rhinos in the world?
Oh, that's a great question. So right now we have 2 greater one-horn rhinos here at the Toronto Zoo. So we have Vishnu and we have Kieran. And then for our white rhinos, we have Zohari. We have, I'm just trying to think, somebody's moved to BC. So let me just get this straight here. We have Zohari and Sabi, and we have Tom, I believe, as well. So we have 3 white rhinos. Now, in the world themselves, there's just under, I believe, about 4,000 greater one-horn rhinos left in the wild. And I know that seems like a very small number, and it definitely is, but they are growing in size due to conservation. Just a couple hundred years ago, they were actually around 100 individuals in the wild. So their numbers have gone up significantly. And the white rhinos, there are the most white rhinos in the wild, and they stand at about 20,000 individual animals.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary Ellen. And again, I want to stress this point that it is low, but it is getting bigger. And this is something that we're seeing with a lot of animals around the globe. Increasingly, kids like you, people that are a little bit older, have started to realize how majestic and wonderful and beautiful and how sticky the saliva is of creatures like Vishnu here. And so they want to protect them and are doing such amazing work to make that a reality around the globe. And so I love that question you kicked off, guys. Miss Fisher's class, I'm going to head to you guys in Carsonville next. Unmute that mic. In fact, all our teachers can unmute your mics, and I'm coming one by one to everyone, I promise. So, Michigan, hello.
Hi.
This is me.
Go ahead, Xavier.
Why do rhinoceros have the scaly armor?
The scaly.
I love that. Yeah, why do they have kind of like skin that looks like armor? Great observation. So let's take a look here at Vishnu's side. So you can see these big kind of folds and flaps of skin that go all along his body here. And these kind of big folds are actually there to help protect him. So greater one-horn rhinos like to live alone in the wild. They're called solitary. And when individuals meet up with each other and they don't want to have a baby at that time, they can sometimes fight with each other. And if we look here, these nice big sharp teeth at the bottom, that's what they can use to fight. And if we look at his body, all these big flaps of skin, they kind of match up where all the important bits are inside. So like lungs and heart. Down here at the back, we'd have our liver and our kind of kidneys area. And so those big flaps of skin are there to help add protection in hopes that a tooth might just scratch or catch on these flaps of skin instead of kind of puncturing inside and hurting the rhino. This is also for any predators, although when you're as big as Vishnu, not many other animals are coming to take you down. You're kind of top there. It's more other rhinos you might have to worry about competing for some space in their house.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mary Ellen. All right, we're going to head to our second Miss Smith with a student who did the best jump up and down and getting the question right earlier, too, at Stony Plain Central. Welcome in Alberta. Unmute your mic and come say hi.
Hi. How old do rhinos get?
Oh, great question. So rhinos in the wild and in captivity can live similar lifespans if they're left naturally. So what I mean by that is, unfortunately, in the wild, we talked about poaching and habitat loss. That has a huge effect on their lifespan in the wild. But if those weren't factors for them, they can live easily into their 30s, even early 40s. Vishnu here is 18, so we'd say he's about middle-aged.
Awesome. And you neatly answered Miss Stanley's question on YouTube as well. So I'm so glad you guys shared that one. Let's head to Corners, Ontario. Miss Benoit's class. Come on in if you have a question for us. Hi, guys.
How much teeth do rhinos have?
How many teeth, Mary Ellen?
That is a wonderful question. All right, so we're going to try and get a peek in. We already saw that he's got two really big teeth on the bottom of his mouth, and then he's got two kind of smaller ones on the top. So we already know we're at 4. And earlier in the broadcast, we talked about how he is a herbivore. So he's an animal who's eating lots of plant material. Now, I want everyone watching right now to do an experiment. Use your tongue and feel around the teeth in your mouth. If you feel at the teeth at the back of your mouth, you're going to notice they're really flat and they're used for grinding up your food. And the teeth at the front are really sharp or sharper, and they're used for ripping and tearing your food. So the ones at the back are the same ones that Vishnu's going to have in his mouth, except ours are smaller than my fingernail, and his are maybe about the size of my fist or a little bit smaller. So his are quite a bit bigger, but I would say he's probably got, if I had to guess, we'll say 4 in the front, maybe 20 teeth or so. We might have to fact check me on that one, but I'm going to say between 20 and 25 teeth probably.
I will endeavor to find out from Uncle Google while we're waiting in the middle of the program. And I want to note, since we've got the kids already rubbing their tongues around looking for teeth, I think we should get them doing like a prehensile lip thing to see if they can do the rhino thing together. It seems like a missed opportunity if we don't. So if you want to try and do a prehensile lip in your class, go for it, is all I'm saying. We're going to head to Miss T's Champs joining us in Surrey, BC. Welcome in, guys, who knew the 13-line ground squirrel, which I've got to say was top tier knowledge. Way to go, guys. But come on in.
Why do their ears spin around?
Yes, good question.
I'm sorry, I coughed right at that moment there. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, why do their ears spin around? We've been seeing them do this the whole time. What's going on?
And he just did it right as you said that. That is a perfect question. So rhinos, they use their different senses, just like humans do, to navigate and kind of figure out where they are. So for humans, we have eyesight, smell, taste, touch, and hearing. Rhinos have the same ones, except theirs aren't all equal. So rhinos have kind of tiny eyes for how big they are, and they're at the side of their head. So they don't really offer them that much visual input, and they don't have the best eyesight, but their ears, however, are absolutely amazing, and they have really good hearing. Actually, when we were all talking earlier with Kieran, and we had a class come on and we were very excited, and the wind was blowing, we actually spooked Kieran a little bit because he heard the noise from the phone, but he didn't know where it was coming from because he couldn't see all the people there. So he actually got startled for a second. And they use their ears to whip around and move like this to tell them where sound is coming from. So right now I'm standing behind Vishnu, and then our keeper's to the side there, and a bird just made a sound in front of him. So he tilted his ears forward to see them. And this lets him know where anything's coming from, if it's dangerous, if it's safe, anything like that. And then the little hairs on top help keep bugs and dirt and dust and things like that from out of his ears.
Just like your eyelashes and eyebrows do. Very, very cool. By the way, I want to say kudos to our classes for being so enthusiastic you spooked a rhino. I know that's not really in good taste on World Rhino Day, but I appreciate it nonetheless. And as to your question, so it's 24 sort of main teeth and 4 other ones, so 28 teeth total for a greater one-horned rhino from the Toronto Zoo website itself, which is
there
fantastic.
we go. That's honestly probably one of the best approximations I've done on the spot. So
bravo. A gold star is coming your way in the mail.
Thank you.
I also want to note, what did we just ask? Oh, I'll think about what I wanted to note, but it was exciting and important. And we talked about rubbing your tongue on your teeth. In terms of wiggling ears, some people can do that too. Try to wiggle your ears if you can. I cannot, but some kids can, so you can try and practice that while we're waiting as well, so you're like a rhino. Mr. Hancock, Georgetown, we're going to head to you guys next, and then one more round of questions because we're whipping through these. Come on in.
I don't think I can wiggle my ears. I'm trying. But we had some students curious about the horn. Can it lose its horn? Can it regrow it? Is there a relationship between Triceratops? A lot of curiosity around the horn.
Nice.
That is amazing. Yeah, the horns are pretty impressive. So I definitely understand your curiosity with them. And out of all of the rhino species, no offense here, Vishnu, but I would say that greater one-horned rhinos probably have the smallest or most unwowing horn of them all. If you get a chance to see some other types of rhinos, they typically have 2 horns, and they're typically quite a bit bigger. The horns can fall off. You can see here, Vishnu's even got some markings on his. That's because he's a really big rubber. So he loves to rub his horn on his things in his exhibit when he itches it, and that can sometimes pop chunks of it off. We have seen before rhinos can accidentally rip it off from the base. It's similar like if you hurt your hand and you ripped off a fingernail. It's kind of a similar feeling or comparison to that. So they can rip them off, and they do continually grow. It's quite a slow speed, but it will grow and regrow back and keep going. As far as the relation to a Triceratops, though, I don't think there is that much, but I wish. I think that would be a very cool lineage of evolution for them. But sadly, I don't think that's where they got that namesake.
I mean, we can tell our classes that since birds are dinosaurs, quite literally, your chicken or the sparrow that's outside your window right now is much closer to a Triceratops than it is to a rhino, unfortunately.
I would say yes.
Yeah. We'll do another broadcast on that in the future. But let's head in for another round of questions. We're going to go a little bit over time, but we're rebels, and it's World Rhino Day, so that's what we're here for together. So I'm going to head to Miss Smith in Austin first, and then we'll head to Carsonville after that. Come on back in Texas, folks. Hi, guys.
Hi, Weston. Go ahead.
In the when we were going on the website, I saw that there was a rhino T-shirt. And it had a picture of a red rhino. Do those actually exist?
We had a picture of a red rhino. Do those actually exist? Is that the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, a red rhino.
You guys have T-shirts with rhinos on them, and there's a red one on the T-shirt.
Well,
You want to know if that's real?
That's a good question. So I'm wearing a rhino shirt right now, which was actually a fundraiser that says "I love rhinos" on it. I will say though that rhinos are mostly gray or like a kind of a dusty color, and they are dusty because they like to lie in dust as well. But they're typically this kind of color, maybe a little bit darker. You might have seen, maybe we had one on a shirt that was, the shirt was a different color. So maybe it made the rhino look like that. The only thing else I can think of is sometimes when you're here in the savannah, looking at our white rhinos, they are gray all over, and then they have red dust on their back. And we actually brush that on for them, and it acts as like a sunscreen for them. So they get a red clay put on them, but it's just on their back. So it does make them look a little pinky in color. So maybe that's what we saw.
I'm also going to share this picture because the first program we had today was with Sumatran rhinos, which of the rhino species are by far the reddest and again have that mud look. So you'll sometimes see a rhino that looks like this, where it's got the red coloration. So they're very interesting looking. That's the best red rhino picture I can find, but great question, guys. All right, let's head to Miss Fisher's class. Come on in, unmute that mic, and you're good to go. Hey.
I want to know how fast can rhinos go?
Yes.
Ooh, how fast can they go? Great question. Well, I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but out of all of the animals who exist on Earth, there's not many that you could outrun as a normal person in a sprint. And so I'm talking about like me, for example. I don't run very fast, but a rhino here can run at top speed about as fast as a car would drive in your neighborhood. So they can go pretty quick. If you ever want to outrun an animal, you got to learn how to run a marathon. Most animals are not built for endurance running. Humans are, though. So if you ever want to outrun a cheetah or anything like that, run them in a marathon. You would easily win. Personally, I cannot run a marathon, but I know that some people definitely can.
Or you wait till Jason's animals are all hibernating and you outrun them then when they can't possibly compete with you, I think is a good strategy.
Exactly.
All right, let's head to Stony Plain. Come on in, guys. We're going to take 4 more questions, folks. But Alberta, take us away, guys.
How much can a baby rhino weigh up to?
Oh, great question. So we know that when they're full grown, a rhino, between all the species, they can weigh between 4 and kind of 6,000 pounds. When they're born, they're about 100 to 150 pounds. So quite a bit smaller. And they're also born without a horn. So thankfully for mama there, they are born hornless, and it grows in later on when they start to mature.
Great question.
To give you an example, humans are born at about 8 pounds. That's an average human, versus a rhino is 150 pounds.
You know, if that is an average size, I never knew that it's 6 pounds, 12 ounces. I was a tiny baby, but now I do know. So thank you for that, Mary Ellen. Cordis, let's head to Miss Benoit's class. Come on in, guys. Hey.
What's their favorite food?
Ooh, what's their favorite food? That's a good question. So they've been eating a lot of cantaloupe and browse and sweet potatoes here today. They love vegetation. Let me think here for a second. Yeah, we're thinking like fruit or bananas, anything sweet. Similar to humans, you know, animals can have a sweet tooth as well. So they love getting that sweet, sugary fruit and all the syrups and things that go with it. Ah, yeah, they use it for their training. So that's how they know they really like it.
That's how I do training as well. It's like the aero bars and the counter, and that makes you really excited to get up and do these broadcasts. Miss T's Champs, come on in Surrey, and then we'll head to Mr. Hancock to wrap up after that. Hi, Miss T's group. Hello.
How tall do rhinos get?
Nice.
Oh, good question. So, although they're quite large, I would say our greater one-horned rhinos here are not short. They're definitely taller than all of our friends watching today, probably all of our classroom friends. But they're not tall. The white rhinos are definitely a taller species. But I would say, so I'm 6 feet tall as an adult human, and I can easily, this is like my viewpoint of our rhino. I was holding the camera lower. So I would say he's probably the same size as like an average adult human. So just under 6 foot, maybe 5'10" or so.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the weight of them earlier, and I want to stress, if you guys look around your entire class, we got a lot of grade 3s and 4s today. Everyone in your class put together does not weigh as much as Vishnu here, which is very exciting. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about these sizable creatures. We're going to head to Mr. Hancock's class, take one more question from Georgetown, and then do our big thank you and farewell, everybody. So get those screaming voices ready. Mr. Hancock, come on in.
We were curious. We've got all of our rhinoceros questions answered, but the bats and this disease that's affecting them while their immune system is compromised, we're curious, what can be done to help these bats?
Yeah, fantastic. Jason, I'll bring you back in, man. Hey.
Yeah, that's a good question. And the problem is we don't seem to know the answer very well, which is why it's become such a difficult problem. But some of the strategies that people are thinking about is things like it's very temperature dependent. So part of the reason that we as people don't get a ton of fungal infections is because our bodies are nice and warm. So some people have thought about maybe trying to artificially warm up the caves where these bats are hibernating. And if you can just bring their body temperatures up a little bit by warming up those caves, then maybe you can keep the fungus from being able to get in there and take over. So that's one thought that people are considering. But yeah, there's a lot of people trying to at least study the fungus and think about can we treat it like it's a fungal infection, but it's kind of hard to go out and do that for millions and millions of bats everywhere. But yeah, warming up the caves is one idea that's really kind of getting popular, I think.
Interesting. I hadn't heard of that in any of our bat programs in the past. We'll have to do something on that in the not too distant future. So thank you, Jason, for sticking around for that. Folks, it is been a real pleasure having you all today with us. Again, this is our most registered program of the year to date. And so thank you all for hanging out with us as we talked hibernation, all sorts of cool stuff with animals, and of course, with our amazing zoo team for World Rhino Day. Everyone can check out hashtag World Rhino Day, say some really cool stuff there. And I want to stress again, for our fans that are really keen on working for conservation of rhinos, check out wildlifeconservancy.ca, torontozoo.com, and of course, our other two programs earlier today, the International Rhino Foundation and Old Pejeta Conservancy as well. But Mary Ellen and Morgan, before we wrap up, is there a final message you want to leave all our kids in classes with today about rhinos?
Yeah, for sure. So we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today and learning all about these incredible animals behind us. The food is gone and Vishnu is ready for his afternoon nap here, so he's staggering off there. But thank you so much. Everyone who learns more about rhinos and about conservation can help save these and so many more wonderful species out there in the world. So thank you so much, and we hope you join us for the rest of our videos that we do for the rest of the year as well.
Thank you.
We're so keen to have you back every month. We're going to be hanging out with the zoo for some program or other, so stay tuned to our newsletter to find out more about that. Now, Mary Ellen, you're an old pro with this. Morgan, I think you might have seen this before, but we're going to bring in all our classes to say a big thank you and farewell. So Stony Plain Central, Miss Benoit, Miss T, Mr. Hancock, Miss Fisher, thank you so much, everybody.
Yes.